This House will come back to order. This House will come back to order. Mr. Clerk, ring the bell. All members will be taking your seats. The clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Honoring the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the 50th anniversary of his assassination, recognizing and commending the Atlanta Freedoms Band on the occasion of his 25th anniversary, recognizing and commending Bill Miller, CEO and co-founder of CRH Healthcare, recognizing and commending Andrea Rowe, CFO and co-founder of CRH Healthcare, recognizing and commending Betty Vanden Bosch on her outstanding public service, recognizing and commending Mitch Daniels on his outstanding public service, recognizing and commending the Republican Leadership for Georgia organization, commending Bridget Ann Spikes, Lanier County Middle School's 2018-2019 Teacher of the Year, commending Tammy Frazier, Lanier County Elementary School's 2018-2019 Teacher of the Year, commending Cherie Gaskins, Lanier County Primary Schools 2018-2019 Teacher of the Year, commending Kelsey Howell, Lanier County High School's 2018-2019 Teacher of the Year, commending Joshua Sailors, a teacher at Woodstock High School, and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. All members will start taking your seats. This House will come to order. Members will please take their seats immediately. Members will please take their seats. Mr. Doorkeeper. Mr. Doorkeeper, please admit the Governor of Georgia, his escort, and staff into the House chamber. House will be in order. We've had a lot of opportunity lately to think about how we measure a life of service. Some would measure it in awards and plaques, endorsements, and the decibel level of the peanut gallery. But I submit there is another way. We can measure it in the homes of families where mom or dad or both have the opportunity now to get up each day and go to a good job that has moved to Georgia or been created here. A job that results from an economic development policy which is pro-job with a focus on education, tax reform, and infrastructure. We can measure it in the lives of Georgians who have yearned for a second chance and for healing. Lives that are being put back together by daring to look at ways that our accountability court system can be a catalyst for changing lives, one life at a time. It's in the dreams of Georgia's school children who are being given better opportunities to strive for the very best and are not confined to an educational system that is failing them, their families, and their communities. And for Georgia's working families, it is QBE fully funded and a historic tax cut. This is the measure of Governor Nathan Deal's impact and legacy, and I am convinced it will be felt for generations in ways that matter in the lives of many, many Georgians. It was not the easy or always the politically popular path. He has not only endured, but triumphed over those whose political vocabulary knows only negativism. And I want to publicly thank him today for 8 of Georgia's greatest years. On behalf of the House of Representatives, I want to thank him for being a partner. Though we have not always agreed, we have always had the ability to discuss in a reasonable, respectful, and civil manner our differences and resolve to work toward finding common ground. Wherever I go in Georgia, I hear people say, "We are going to miss Nathan Deal." And we will. Governor, you and Ms. Sandra have earned the right to enjoy life, each other, your family, and friends. And I know that I speak for all of this body when I say we are blessed that the two of you pass this way. Because of you, all Georgia families will enjoy a better and greater Georgia for generations to come. My colleagues, for the final day 40 of this administration, it is my honor to present to you Governor Nathan Deal.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That was a very generous and kind summary of what we've been able to achieve. But first of all, I would like to say to all of you, thank you on a personal level for your kindness, for your support of me and of Sandra. If I did not know that you were late in the day and that you had a lot of business to transact, I would invite Sandra to speak with me. I'll pay for that later. But the speaker gave a very good summary of these last 8 years. Some of you have been here the entire time that I have had the honor of serving as governor of this state. And I think as we look back over these past 8 years, we can see a lot of things that all of us should have pride in. And that is across party lines as well. We have worked together on many things that have made the lives of our citizens even better and their children and grandchildren's lives better as well. And that's really what public service is all about. I simply thank you all for your generosity in that regard. And this session, I thought it was going to be hard to top some of the other sessions that we have had. But I think all of you can go home and say, for the first time in 33 years, the state of Georgia has fully funded the QBE formula. That is a great achievement. Think of how many sessions of the General Assembly passed during those 33 years and were not able to do what you did this session. Also, in terms of cutting taxes, you did something that, as we worked together on this, the personal income tax of our state had not been cut since 1934 when it was put in place. And that cut, along with cuts on other areas of corporate tax, etc., was a first in terms of the volume and the magnitude of those cuts. And you should all be proud that you'll be able to say, I was there, and I voted for the tax cut that will help the citizens, not just of the district that I represent, but the citizens of our entire state. So, at the end of this session, in just a few hours, we can all leave and go back home, and we can say, this was a good session. Thank you for sharing these 8 years with me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you very much.
All right, House will continue to be in order. House will continue to be in order. When we started today, remember what I told you? Well, this was a big day. Been waiting on it for months. Opening day of baseball season. Well, guess what just happened at SunTrust Park? Walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth. Yeah. Where's Jody at? Chair recognizes Representative Lott for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House insist on its position on HB 992 and appoint a committee of conference.
Representative Lott has moved that this House insist on its position on House Bill 992 and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 992 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 11 of Title 31 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating to emergency medical services so as to eliminate certain requirements relating to the use of automated external defibrillators.
Is there any objection to the lady's motion? The chair hears none and the House has insisted. The chair appoints as a committee of conference Representative Lott of the 122nd, Chairman Jaspers of the 11th, and Chairman England of the 116th. Chair recognizes Representative Dubnik for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute of House Bill 275 as amended by the House.
Representative Dubnik has moved that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 275 as amended by the House. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 275 to be titled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 27 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions relative to game and fish so as to change provisions relative to rules and regulations used to establish criminal violations.
Chair recognizes Representative Dubnik to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. House Bill 275 started out as a life jacket bill, and as Representative Coomer said, something about walking on water. We've gone through some changes. I want to highlight those quickly. The current version of House Bill 275 that I'm asking for here adds language from House Bill 950 of Chairman Shaw. That was passed by both the House and the Senate committees, which allows the Department of Natural Resources to implement a deer management access plan. It also adds language from Chairman Knight's House Bill 988, which also passed the House and Senate committees, making it permissible to hunt big game with air guns. And lastly, or next to last, adds Chairman Lumsden's House Bill 665 that did pass this body unanimously, eliminating a duplication of notice for abandoned vessels to the GBI, and lastly includes the Department of Natural Resources annual cleanup language. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to yield for questions.
You have a question? Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the Majority Caucus Whip, Representative Coomer, to your right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, yield.
Yes, sir.
You said that I referred to walking on water on this bill before, but it sounds like you've taken the fishes and the loaves and trying to feed the 5,000 on this bill. Is that correct?
Well, I am a follower of Christ, so I do as I'm told.
Do you have another question? Do you yield?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, one more.
Chair recognizes your delegation mate from Hall County, Representative Donahue, to your left.
Does the gentleman yield?
I'm not going to entertain any amendments, but yes.
Let me make sure I understand this. So a deer now can attend in an unattended vessel, wear a life jacket, and are we probably going to lead him toward bait and shoot him with an air rifle?
You know, most of that sounds true, but as you've always told me, if you'll just read the bill, it's all there.
That's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the House amendment? The chair hears none, and the House amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 275 as amended by the House, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion. The ayes are 136, the nays are 36. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 275 as amended by the House. Chair recognizes Representative Gravely for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House agree with House Bill 795 as amended by the Senate.
You're agreeing to the Senate amendment. Representative Gravely has moved that the House agree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 795. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 795 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2, entitled 34 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the Department of Labor so as to authorize the Commissioner of Labor to perform certain functions.
Chair recognizes Representative Gravely to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House members, I want to ask you to agree to House Bill 795, the Senate amendments. There's two of them. One of them was House Bill 800, which simply eliminates several judge emeritus positions from the State Board of Workers' Compensation. These positions were created prior to the employment retirement system. There's currently no longer a need for the judge emeritus positions on the State Board of Workers' Compensation. Also, the other amendment, which was a bipartisan amendment in the Senate, basically reinforces that the State Board of Workers' Compensation should follow current law and send their intent for any rule or regulation making authority to the appropriate committees of the General Assembly before enacting new rules and regulations. Mr. Speaker, I'll stand for any questions if there are any.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I would move that this House agree to House Bill 795.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 795, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 172, the nays are 0. This House has agreed to the Senate amendment to House Bill 795.
Chair recognizes Representative Silcox for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to make a motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 419.
Representative Silcox moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 419. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 419 to be titled an act to amend Chapter 60, Title 36, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding local government provisions applicable to counties and municipal corporations so as to enable the governing authority of certain counties to further regulate the use or ignition of consumer fireworks.
Chair recognizes Representative Silcox to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 419 provides for the local control of fireworks from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. through their local noise ordinances. This bill passed the House last session overwhelmingly. However, this session, the Senate has added several provisions. They have added, for example, the holidays of Memorial Day weekend, but not Memorial Day itself, as well as Labor Day, to the holidays that would be exempt from local control. It also added a provision allowing the governor to issue a declaration of drought, temporarily disallowing the fireworks use and sale. Finally, the Senate added a provision requiring every licensed distributor to display a safety sign in the retail areas where fireworks are sold. Since none of these additions materially affect the original intent of my bill to allow local control of fireworks almost every day in Georgia, I would ask for your favorable consideration and vote yes on the agreement to the substitute for House Bill 419.
There are no questions.
Thank you. I'll yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. On the lady's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 419, all those in favor will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the lady's motion. The yeas are 157, the nays are 6, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute, House Bill 419. Chair recognizes Chairman Dempsey for a motion.
I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to HB 344.
Chairman Dempsey moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 344. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 344 to be titled an act to amend Code Section 19754, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to motions to set aside determinations of paternity so as to allow parties beyond move-ants in cases concerning child support order to request a genetic test from the Department of Human Services.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dempsey to explain the motion.
House Bill 344 passed this House with overwhelming support. The Senate actually changed just two things in it, changing the word from movement to individual and paternity to genetic testing. If there are no questions, I will yield the well.
There are no questions. The ladies yielded the well. On the ladies' motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 344, all those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the lady's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 344. The yeas were 166, the nays were 0, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute, House Bill 344. Chair recognizes Representative Newton for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I move that this House agree to the Senate substitute for House Bill 995.
Representative Newton moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute for House Bill 995. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 995 to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 80, Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other government entities, so as to provide for certain disclosures from consultants and other contractors who enter into contracts or arrangements with counties, municipal corporations, and other government entities.
Chair recognizes Representative Newton to explain the motion.
Colleagues, House Bill 995 is a transparency bill regarding consultants. We passed it 175 to nothing. A slight change made in the Senate was a clarification with the definition of a consultant and also adding the word local to make sure this only applied to local entities.
You have a question. The chair recognizes Representative Fleming for a question.
Thank you, Representative Newton. You and I have had a chance to talk about this, but I wanted to ask you about the definition of consultant. How did the Senate define that?
It's in the bill. They defined it as it regards consultants who are hired for the purpose of assisting with the preparation of an RFP or a bid package.
And it speaks to paid or unpaid consultants as well,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So if I have a committee that helps design or a citizens committee that puts together suggestions for a courthouse that I'm building in my district, wouldn't they be unpaid consultants under that definition?
The only requirement is that they disclose any financial relationships with one of the bidders. So I suppose if somebody was in a contract to prepare a bid, then they would have to disclose if they have a financial relationship with one of the bidders.
So
it's the same status with dealing with a state agency.
So the guy that owned the local hardware store wanted to eventually do business with someone and sell them plywood, and he happened to be on the committee. If he didn't disclose that before he knew the bidders was, he wouldn't be able to bid on providing plywood for the building.
Well, the threshold for this is things that municipalities are required to submit a bid for, not for just every procurement, but only ones that require the county or municipality to do an RFP or a bid.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There are no more questions. The gentleman's yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute for House Bill 995, all those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion. The yeas are 156, the nays are 7, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 995. Chair recognizes Representative Spencer for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I disagree with the Senate substitute to House Bill 605.
Representative Spencer moves that the House disagree to the Senate substitute for House Bill 605. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 605 to be titled an act to amend Article 2, Chapter 3, Title 9 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated regarding to specific periods of limitation so as to change provisions relating to the revival of certain claims involving childhood sexual abuse.
Chair recognizes Representative Spencer to explain his motion.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I'd ask you to support the disagreement to the Senate substitute so that we can get into a conference committee. This substitute is very convoluted, increases the burden of proof for a victim to get into the courtroom to hold their perpetrator and their entity who knowingly covered up child sexual abuse. Thank you. I'll stand for any questions.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 605, is there any objection? Hearing none, the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 605. Chair recognizes Chairman Lumsden for a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 760.
Okay. Chairman Lumsden has moved that the House disagree or agree to the Senate substitute for House Bill 760. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 760 to be titled an act to amend Chapter 24, Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance generally so as to revise certain definitions to clarify renewal, non-renewal, and reduction in coverage.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lumsden to explain his motion.
House Bill 760 addresses the notice of policy change. We passed this bill earlier in this session. The current requirement is for a non-renewal notice. That is often confusing to the consumer, thinking that the non-renewal notice is a cancellation, which is a different type of notice. We changed it in the bill to a change in coverage notice. The Senate asked that that be changed to a notice of reduction in coverage and done in all caps, large letters to bring attention to the change. That's all the bill does. I'd appreciate your favorable support for the Senate substitute of 760.
There are no questions.
I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 760, all those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the yeas are 166, the nays are 0, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 760. Chair recognizes Chairman Dempsey for a motion.
I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 494.
Chairman Dempsey has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 494. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 494 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1A of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to early care and learning so as to revise certain provisions relating to the safety of children in early care and education programs.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dempsey to explain her motion.
House Bill 494 passed overwhelmingly. The Senate made 2 changes. In one place, they changed the word may to shall. In another, they added 3 words to allow decal more flexibility around existing language affecting recouping of funds. They added the words willfully and continually. That is it, Madam Speaker. If there are any questions, I will take them. If not, I will yield the well.
You have 2 questions. Chair recognizes Representative Turner for a question.
Thank you. Lady yield.
Yes.
What was the may to shall concerning specifically?
If you do have the bill in front of you, particularly, it is on line 254. Originally, our House bill had said shall. It was changed to may in committee, and then it went back. So it went to our original intent. It talks about the department shall cease to issue funds. Did you see it?
Chair recognizes Representative Pizzold for a question. He waves. There are no more questions.
Thank you. I ask for your favorable support.
Lady has yielded the well. On the lady's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 494, all those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. For what purpose does Chairman Knight rise? He waves. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the lady's motion, the yeas were 163, the nays were 0, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 494. Chair recognizes Chairman Green for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Resolution 1103.
Chairman Green moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to H.R. 1103. The clerk will read the caption.
House Resolution 1103, authorizing the conveyance of certain state-owned real property located in Baldwin, Bryan, Chatham, Doherty, Fulton, Hall, and Putnam County.
Chair recognizes Chairman Green to explain his motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House passed the original resolution 169 to 0, and the Senate has passed the substitute 52 to 1. And Chairman Harbison's committee added 2 items over there. One is the authorization to convey an old prison in Jackson County to Jackson County for $10, and the requirement that it be used for public purpose. And then the second thing they did was to authorize to convey approximately 15 acres of air rights and 5 acres in fee simple to an area known as the Gulch by competitive bid for fair market value. I move that we go ahead and agree with the Senate on this, and I ask the House to agree to this.
There are no questions. The gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to H.R. 1103, all those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion. The yeas are 167, the nays are 0, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to H.R. 1103. Chair recognizes Representative Donahue for a motion.
Thank you, Lady Speaker. Thank you, everyone of the House. I come to you with H.R. 1104, the synopsis and easement, to agree on the substitute from the Senate.
The gentleman moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to H.R. 1104. The clerk will read the caption.
House Resolution 1104, authorizing the grant of non-exclusive easements for the construction, operation, and maintenance of facilities, utilities, roads, and ingress and egress in and on, over, under, across, or through property owned by the state of Georgia and Bartow, Bullock, Butts, Chatham, Clay, Columbia, Manuel, Floyd, Forsyth, Fulton, Harris, Henry, Liberty, Macon, Montgomery, Murray, Tottenham, Towns, and White counties.
Chair recognizes Representative Donahue to explain his motion.
The Senate added DeKalb County, Fulton County, Hall County, and Richmond County to the easements.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to H.R. 1104, all those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the yeas are 163, the nays are 4, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to H.R. 1104. The chair recognizes Floor Leader F. Strachan for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House agree to Senate Bill 407 as amended by the Senate.
The gentleman moves that the House agree to the Senate amendment to Senate Bill 407. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 407 to be titled an act to provide for comprehensive reform for offenders to amend Title 15 in Chapter 6A of Title 35 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to courts and the criminal justice Coordinating Council.
Chair recognizes Floor Leader F. Stration to explain his motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Senate Bill 407 included the criminal justice reform recommendations and also had e-filing included. The e-filing provision has been, the effective date has been changed by the Senate to January of 2019 to provide clerks with some additional time to be prepared to implement the new law. If there are any questions, Madam Speaker Pro Tem, I'd be happy to answer them.
There are no questions.
I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate amendment to Senate Bill 407, all those in favor will vote yes, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Representative Cox rise?
Madam Speaker, pursuant to Rule 133, I'd like to be excused from this vote.
On the gentleman's request that he be excused, it is so ordered. Have all members voted? Well, locked it. On the gentleman's motion that the yeas are... The clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the yeas are 172, the nays are 0, and the House has agreed to the Senate amendment to Senate Bill 407. The chair recognizes Representative Corbett for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move that the House insist on its position on House Bill 93 and appoint a committee on conference.
Representative Corbett moves that the House insist on its position in disagreement to the Senate substitute amendment to House Bill 93 and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 93 to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48.235.1 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating the refund of sales and use taxes so as to provide that no interest shall be paid on refunds of sales and use taxes to a purchaser that held a certificate or exemption letter.
Is there objection? The chair hears none. The House has insisted. The chair appoints Representative Jay Powell of the 171st, Representative Stevens of the 164th, and Representative Corbett of the 174th as a committee of conference on House Bill 93. The chair recognizes Chairman Willard for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On Senate Bill 338, I move that the House recede from this position and accept the Senate version.
Chairman Willard moves that the House recede on its position to Senate Bill 338. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 338 to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 13 and Title 50 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions for administrative procedure so as to modify requirements for agency rulemaking.
Chair recognizes Chairman Willard to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What we have is a bill before you that started this Senate. It was to set up a new, make some corrections on the Administrative Procedure Act that grew out of a problem we had this past summer with some rules adopted by the Department of Revenue that the two bodies objected to, and we felt there needed to be a better notice situation. The bill came out of the Senate, came over the House. We did some other things to it that made it a little more convoluted as a substitute bill that was passed by the House. It went over to the Senate. They disagreed. They insisted on their position. The bill has come back, and what it does is really just sets up some corrections that we're doing in the Administrative Procedure Act on how the House and the Senate can disagree on rules that are implemented by various departments. That is the basis of the bill. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You have a question. The chair recognizes Chairman Martin for a question.
Chairman Willard.
Yes, sir.
Just procedurally, can the clerk tell us what LC number we're working off of? We have several pieces of that bill on our desk, and I'd like to know which one we're.
What's your number?
If we recede, which one we would be left with?
Mr. Martin, the Senate version is SB 338/CSFA. Any other questions, Madam Speaker?
Chair recognizes Representative Fleming for a question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're going to recede and go back to the original Senate bill that came over.
Right.
From Senator, was it Ligon's original bill?
It is, and we made some, some changes down in the House Judiciary.
Yes, sir.
Made a little more convoluted format of it.
Right.
There's been a lot of dissension among the various departments of how convoluted ours part was. So in the interest of time, as well as getting something in place, we are agreeing to go ahead and accept the Senate version if that's the will of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There are no more questions.
I'd ask for your favorable consideration vote for the receding from the House position.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chairman Willard has moved that the House recede from its position on Senate Bill 338. Is there objection? All those in favor will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion. The yeas are 150, the nays are 16, and the House has receded from its position on Senate Bill 338. Chair recognizes Representative Williams for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the House insist on its position to Senate Bill 385.
Representative Williams moves that the House insist on its position on House Bill 385, or Senate Bill 385. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 385 to be titled an act to amend Code Section 12-839 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia, Annotated relating cost reimbursement and fees and surcharges so as to change the surcharge imposed by host local governments regarding solid waste disposal facilities.
Chair recognizes Representative Williams to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a substitute. This is the bill that gives the GBI the authorization for interment and disinterment of skeletal remains. This has been voted on by this House 3 times unanimously, and this is a substitute for that bill.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Williams has moved that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 385. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has insisted on its position on Senate Bill 385. Chair recognizes Representative Lott for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House insist on its position on SB 432.
Representative Lott moves that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 342. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 432. To be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating imposition rate computation exemptions from state income tax so as to provide for the expiration of certain tax credits.
Chair recognizes Representative Lott to explain the motion.
The Senate and the House are in disagreement, and I do insist on SB 432 in its current form.
Representative Lott has moved that the House insist on its position for Senate Bill 432. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has insisted. Chair recognizes Representative Carson for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that this House agree to the Conference Committee report on House Bill 217.
Representative Carson moves that the House adopt the Committee of Conference report on House Bill 217. The clerk will read the Conference Committee report.
The committees of conference on HB 217 recommend that both the Senate and the House of Representatives recede from their positions and that the attached committees of conference substitute to HB 217 be adopted.
Chair recognizes Representative Carson to explain the Committee of Conference report.
Folks, this is the Student Scholarship Organization bill. The program is currently in effect since 2008. It's capped at $58 million. We're going to $100 million. We've agreed with the Senate to go to $100 million next year and do so for 10 years, at which time it will go back to $58 million. Fees are reduced as appropriate. The bill also requires more extensive reporting and disclosures, as well as a thorough review by the state economic analysis and review by the state auditor. We've also eliminated quartile reporting and gone with a percentage to federal poverty level income for the families of the scholarship recipients. We've also added some language in regard to sales and use tax exemptions for educational and nonprofit and religious-based entities based on several organizations were being charged a use tax for non-commercial written materials or mailings. And I wanted to mention my friend Brooks Coleman. Brooks, we've worked together on the Opportunity School District credits. This is basically the credits. We're extending the sunset on the credits to 2023 to allow for more credits to turn around Opportunity Schools. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield the well.
Do you have a question?
I'll take a question.
The chair recognizes Representative Wilkinson for a question to your left.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Can you walk me through, I guess, lines 26 through lines 30? So my understanding is that when we passed it out of this bill, is it true that we asked for 65 million or was it 85?
Well, this was as a result of a year of work of negotiations with the Senate. What we agreed to do is just do this increase to 100 million, but only do it for 10 years. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield the well.
Parliamentary, sorry.
The gentleman has yielded the well. For what purpose does Representative Benton rise? He waives. For what purpose does Representative Wilkerson rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that one chamber asked for 65, one chamber asked for 85, and usually in a negotiation you would come somewhere in the middle, and 100 million seems to blow both of those out of the water?
If the gentleman so speaks, for what purpose does Representative Benton rise?
Is it not true that that out of all the students that get the scholarship, only about less than 20% are those that are in schools that the scholarship was intended for them to get out of? So 80% of the money is going to people that really don't need it. Thank you.
If the gentleman so speaks, for what purpose does Representative Fleming rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Madam Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that I disagree with everything Mr. Benton just said, and also that in this, every increase that was put in there will go away in a decade because it has a sunset in it?
If the gentleman so speaks, for what purpose does Representative Cantrell rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry quickly.
Isn't it true that 100% of the students at the King's Academy where I serve on the board
who receive this scholarship do so through a means-tested program. They are at-need students.
If the gentleman so speaks. So for what purpose does Chairman Coleman rise?
Yes, Madam Speaker, isn't it true that this bill also includes a very important addition, and that's to help the failing public schools, and there's a $5 million tax credit in there, and this just extends that sunset for about 4 more years. Isn't that true?
The chair is sure that the chairman knows that of which he speaks. Last one that the chair is going to entertain. For what purpose does Chairman Setzler rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Madam Chair.
State one inquiry.
Isn't it true that because this is just state money, all the local tax money that's collected for these students remains in place? So per pupil funding for the kids in public schools go up as a result of this program, isn't it true?
If the gentleman so speaks, we are going to vote on this measure on the adoption of the conference committee report on House Bill 217. All in favor of the adoption of the conference committee report will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the adoption of the conference committee report, the yeas are 99, the nays are 54, and the committee of conference report is adopted. Chair recognizes Chairman Powell for a motion. House Bill 17. Chair recognizes Chairman Powell for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I move that this House agree to the Senate amendment as amended by the House. House Bill 721.
Chairman Powell moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute as amended to House Bill 721. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 721 to be titled, an act to amend Code Section 4527 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the examination of applicants so as to devise the criteria which the Department of Driver Services shall authorize licensed driver training schools to administer the on-the-road driving skills testing.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to explain the Senate substitute and the House amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, House Bill 721 was a bill we passed earlier this session that authorized the Department of Driver Services to allow licensed driving schools to do the testing. And then when it left the House, we had a 5-year gap that DDS had asked for because they wanted the more experienced schools that they could actually trust not to get into scurrilous behavior as they were doing this. And what the Senate's done, they put that language back to 2 years. What I would ask this House to do is look at the amendment that we've got prepared. And if you'll listen for just a minute, I want to give you the background on this.
Gentlemen will suspend. The chair is having a hard time listening. Take all conversations to the anteroom and take your seats. Gentlemen will continue.
Thank you, ma'am. And the amendment that I bring to you, this is a public safety issue that deals with driver education. And I'm going to give you a little history to this. Back several years ago, this House passed a legislation that gave a 5% surcharge on fines that would go to, at that time it was called the Joshua's Law, so that we could find a revenue source to start promoting driver education for the youth of this state. Well, after a few years, we found out that they'd taken in several millions of dollars, and that money had been dumped into the general fund and never went to driver's education. So about 5 years ago, we trimmed that 5% back to 1.5%. Well, 1.5% brings in about $2.8 million a year. And thanks to the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, in the last couple of years, they've instituted a scholarship program for driver's education to the young adults in this state. Now, they've already booked that out. The $2.5 million that they're bringing in annually a year is booked out, and they're asking us to raise that again to give them 3%, which would give them about $5.6 million a year, so that they could do scholarships for driver education. And these scholarships, that those students, they can go to the tech schools, they can go to private driving schools, they can go to anyone is authorized to give this type of training. And that in brief is what this bill does, and I would certainly ask the members to support this initiative for driver safety for our young adults and our youngsters in this state. And I'll be more than glad to answer any questions about this issue.
There are a couple of questions. The chair recognizes Chairman Martin for a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Powell, you yield?
I do.
A person or two between us, but I can see you if you can see me.
Can't miss me, and I can't miss you.
Yes, sir. Pardon me. I understand what the gentleman's saying, and that's on line 17 of the bill, the increase from 1.5 to 3%. My question is, if my memory serves, and isn't it true that we collected a lot more when we were at 5% than we spent on driver's education, and the difference went in the general fund? Isn't that true?
That is exactly right.
So isn't it true, if we wanted to be completely honest with the public, we have money in the general fund, and we should be able to fund this driver's ed without increasing these fees again, because we owe that money back to the public and to the young people of Georgia, because that's what we collected it for over the years, and it wasn't. Isn't it true? We didn't have a good program to dispense the money to get quality education. Now that we do, we ought to fund that from our own budget without tacking on more fees.
Well, you can look at it a lot of different ways, but I know that what the General Assembly did was when we realized that 5% money was being tossed into the general fund, and this was during the prior administration. And then we curtailed it as was the necessity and the duties of this General Assembly. So we cut it from the 5 to the 1.5%. Now the 1.5% is being used as it was intended to be used, but they're not getting as many of the scholarships out to the teen drivers in this state as what the 3% would do.
Yeah.
There's no looking back. Quite frankly, there's no looking back. It's sort of like Margaret Mitchell's book, Gone with the Wind. That's when money goes to the general fund 10, 12 years ago.
Well, gentlemen, yield for a further question?
Certainly.
Isn't it true we have a rainy day fund and a fund balance, and that money went in there to grow that fund, and if we so chose, we could budget that money, We could have done it this year, and we can do it next year to do that without increasing the fees. That would be up to this legislature, but isn't it true we have money to do that without putting these fees back? Because we owe that money to the young people of the state of Georgia to do the driver's education as Joshua's law was meant to do when it was passed by this body, like you say, over a decade ago. Isn't that true, sir?
That's what the gentleman believes, and I leave it with him, but you know, you and I also know as realists that ain't how it's going to happen.
Chair recognizes Floor Leader Rogers for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
I certainly will.
Is it not true that these scholarships that we're talking about, first priority is given to children and relatives of public safety personnel and military that have been killed in the line of duty?
That's correct.
And that last year, close to 5,500 scholarships were awarded, and if this bill passes, that number will increase to about 6,000?
Probably increase a little bit more than that because admin fees are already being taken care of. So this is money that will go straight into the scholarship programs for teen drivers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes Minority Leader Hughley for a question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Isn't it true, to the gentleman in the well, do you yield?
I do.
Isn't it true that even though, speaking to what Representative Martin was saying, we can't go back and retrieve those funds, and if we're looking to the future, we need to provide a path to provide the scholarships that are so needed to these students?
You're exactly right, and I appreciate that answer. You know, as hard shell as I've been about all of these surcharges over the years, there's one thing that I've always been a supporter of, and that's driver education for our teens in the state. Because those lessons that they learn the right way in driver's education can save their lives and hopefully save some of our lives.
Last question. The chair recognizes Representative Williams for a question.
Coach Williams. That was the fix. Coach Williams, you recognizing me, Madam Chairman? Yeah. Gentleman yield?
I certainly will, Coach.
Is it not true in 1972, my first job in Florida was a driver's education teacher?
If you say so, I know from what you speak.
I do. I was. I'm going to vote for your bill, but I myself, along with Chairman Martin, believe that the money that is owed to the public should be received to the public, and we should not go up on those fees. But I am going to vote for your bill. Thank you very much.
And I thank you, sir.
There are no more questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to encourage you to vote in favor of this amendment, and let's start educating and putting under the scholarship rolls more of the teen drivers.
All right. First question. Is there any objection to the adoption of the House amendment? The chair hears none, and the House amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 721 as amended by the House, all those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the yeas were 126, the nays were 38, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House, as amended by the House, to House Bill 721. Chair recognizes Chairman McCall for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move we agree to the Senate substitute to H.R. 444, please.
The gentleman moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to H.R. 444. The clerk will read the caption.
House Resolution 444, honoring the life of Mr. Willie Thomas Murray and dedicating a bridge in his memory.
Chair recognizes Chairman McCall to explain the motion.
This is an annual road naming, bridge naming. Some places are naming culverts and anything else they can find for people. So if y'all will just agree to it, we'll be done with it for this year.
There are no questions, and the gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to H.R. 444, all those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion. The yeas were 156, the nays were 6, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Resolution 444. Chair recognizes Chairman Powell for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would ask this House to agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 410.
Chairman Powell moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 410. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 410 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 44 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating the regulation of specialized land transactions so as to provide for limits on certain fees imposed on purchasers of condominiums and lots and property owners associations.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you a bill that we passed pretty handily out of the House earlier in the session. This dealt with the situation about the homeowner associations and what they were providing upon request for the closing documents on different types of closings. Under current state law that's been on the books for 40 years, said that these companies, the condos or the management companies or whoever's in charge of these properties, that upon request that they could charge $10 so that they could get a statement of accounts. And that statement of accounts, if you remember, was a very simple document that showed what was owed to that homeowner association. Now, what happened in that was that a lot of these associations and a lot of the folks working for them, they basically expanded whatever they were doing, and it was sort of a dirty deal, quite frankly, that when people called and all they wanted was a statement of accounts of what was owed, then all of a sudden they were told, well, you got to pay $300, $400, $500 or whatever. But we're going to give you all this other information. We're going to give you homeowner docs. We're going to give you master insurance policies and all of this. And then the real basics was basic information in Georgia is what was needed. When it left the House, quite frankly, it was a higher amount than what I thought it should have been. But we're talking about something with a sweep of a keystroke on most of these things for the basic statement of accounts. Well, it went to the Senate, and what the Senate committee did in this was they categorized it in two things. They defined what the statement of accounts was, which is what I just said. The amount owed, the name of the petitioner who was asking, the name of the property owner. If it was in collections, and all they had to do was give up the name of the law firm so that that closing attorney could call the law firm to find out what the payoff was. They also went ahead and they did that at a $100 fee. That sounds like an awful lot of. That sounds like a lot of money for just a simple statement of accounts. But what they did on the second phase to that is they did a second part to that formula, and they had these other documents, and those were the ones that I talked to. So they basically split them in two different categories. The other category was HOA docs. Any and all other pertinent type of information that might be needed basically by the underwriters. It might be writing a loan, so then they can do that, and that's a $50 fee. If it's an expedited fee within 3 days of needing it or the closing, then that company or that condo association can charge another $50. So it's basically capped now at $200, and which is more realistic for the consumers of Georgia. And that's what it does.
There are no questions.
Thank you so much.
The gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 410, all those in favor will vote yes, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion. The yeas are 155, the nays are 3, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 410. Chair recognizes Chairman Knight for a motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to make a motion that we agree to the House Bill 374 as amended by the Senate.
Chairman Knight moves that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 374. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 374 to be titled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to ad valorem tax on property so as to allow for electronic filings of returns in certain cases.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This was one of the bills regarding the appeals process with tax assessors. The Senate made one change. We took out some language to, regarding the 299C, which is a 2-year lock when there's an appeals process for the taxpayer. It was out of abundance of caution, and that was the only change that was made to the bill. I urge your favorable consideration. Thank you.
There are no questions, and the gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 374, all those in favor will vote yes, all those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the yeas are 160, the nays are 11, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 374. Chair recognizes Chairman Stevens for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move this House agree to the Senate substitute, House Bill 59, as amended by this House.
Chairman Stevens has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute as amended by the House to House Bill 59. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 59 to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48.729.8 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to tax credits for the rehabilitation of historic structures.
Chair recognizes Chairman Stevens to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you might recall, this is last year's bill. We have a track record since 2015 of creating $400 million in investments, creating 8,000 jobs, and creating $3 million in wages as we save some of these buildings from dilapidation. This bill's been worked on for 2 years. We stripped out most of the stuff that the Senate put in there, so I'm asking you to go back to the House version, which caps major projects at $40 million. What you voted for last year overwhelmingly was $50 million. So, and they've also added in the Senate, which I agree to, electric cars, and they've also added an addition for withholding towards the tax credit on the film tax credit. on the last page. And Mr. Speaker, I'll yield if there's any questions.
There are questions. The chair recognizes Chairman Martin for a question.
Gentlemen, to my friend, Yield, my friend from Savannah.
I do.
You know I have been here since the, is it not true I've been here since the historic tax credits were put in place, and I'm supportive of those, and I think they work well for the state of Georgia. But isn't it true that you and I have spoken, and I think Section 2 may be the most egregious piece of legislation we've seen this year, and I would speak on the matter, but I don't believe that we're in the posture to have a speaker, so if you would answer these questions for me. Isn't it true that in Section 2 we are giving a manufacturer up to $5 million a year in income tax credits?
No, sir. We're giving to any manufacturer that creates that's domiciled in this state, which could mean Kia or anyone else, a tax credit to build these electric cars. And there's a study to further answer the question that by 2025, ladies and gentlemen, 1 out of every 6 cars are going to be electric. So I'm hoping that we're going to get ahead of this just as we did the film tax credit.
Yes, sir. But I didn't mean to pick a manufacturer, although one could surmise there might be one in mind. But isn't it true that there's a limit of $5 million a year that some manufacturer may get at the tune of $2,500 per vehicle? The requirements, isn't it true, are $2,500 per vehicle to get a credit. They have to have 50 full-time jobs. And if one does the math on that, we're paying them about $100,000 a year per job in tax credits to create those jobs in Georgia. Isn't that what the math says, Mr. Chairman?
That's what the math says, but it's the incentive, if I can finish.
Yes, sir.
Again, what we're doing is incentivizing an industry, a fledgling industry, to create jobs just as we did for the film industry.
Yes, sir, but I don't think we did that, isn't it true, at $100,000 per job. But let me ask this last question just for the posture. If we support your, I'm going to give you credit with the yours, sir, because it's your bill, and I'm supportive of it. So to give you possession, I mean that as a compliment. The rest of your bill that you propose here, isn't it true that a no vote on this agree would just put the House in a posture of disagree and would allow you to go and get your bill directly in a clean bill from the Senate with the historical credits and the film tax credits? And if we don't like the EV credits, because that has not been vetted through the House, it did not start in the House as revenue measures are supposed to, isn't it true, that a no vote on here would not kill this measure but would give you the opportunity to keep it clean and back to the House language? Isn't that true?
And a yes vote, Mr. Representative, would mean that we would pass this bill. We would create an industry that's going to make Georgia, right now we're number 2 in the U.S. in the electric car industry. I'm like the governor, I want to be number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll support the bill. And if there's no more questions.
There is. The chair recognizes Chairman Houston for a question.
Is it not true that I do support the bill as the way it originally was, but is it not true I feel like I've got to give one company $5 million to get a tax credit for historical preservation?
That's the way the original bill came over. We fixed that on the last page of the bill. So Kia is the other domiciled car manufacturer. We could become the number 1 electric car manufacturer state in the country.
Well, isn't it true we were giving individuals this tax credit, and now we're just giving one company right now this tax credit?
Could be 2.
Two companies.
And we're
and so the people that really drive the cars, we just didn't do them anymore. We're just going to the ones that. And could you tell me why this didn't go through Ways and Means?
That's a good question. It was added on the Senate, and it's one that I believe we've got an opportunity here, so I'm allowing it to go on the bill.
So you agree to give them this money just to get yours?
No, ma'am. I agree to get this so that we can create jobs. Madam Speaker, I'll yield the well.
All right. The gentleman has yielded the well. So the posture is we have 2 questions. The first is there any objection to the adoption of the House amendment? There is objection. Does the gentleman move? Gentleman moves. All right, all those in favor of the House amendment to the Senate substitute will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, on the amendment to the Senate substitute, the measure has failed, and now the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute. No. That's right. We've disagreed with the amendment, and now we're in a posture to take a vote on if we agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 59. All those in favor of the Senate substitute to House Bill 59 will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 59, the yeas were 17, the nays were 132. House disagree. And the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 59, and the measure will head back to the Senate. House will come to order for a special recognition. House will come to order. Please take your seats and cease all talking. The chair recognizes Speaker David Ralston.
Thank you very much, Madam Pro Tem. I think we're going to need lineup cards come next January with all the retirements that we're having here. Not just members, but staff people, and very, very important staff people. So I have saved for our final recognition an individual who I think is probably the first to get here and the last to leave. And he keeps this house going, and he does it with a smile on his face every single day. And I know that we each have come to love Phil Tucker and Eloise, and they are part of our family. Phil became an assistant doorkeeper here in 2002. In 2003, he went to work in the Capitol Post Office, and then in 2007 was elected by this body to be the doorkeeper of the Georgia House of Representatives. He has served with great distinction in that position, and he brings Eloise with him when he comes to work, and especially during session. And she makes the best peanut brittle in the world at Christmas time. I hope I still get that, Eloise. But Phil, we're going to miss both of you. Would y'all come down here, please? So I am honored on behalf of the members of the House to present a copy of House Resolution 1546 to our retiring doorkeeper and our friend, Phil Tucker.
Thank all of you so much. You know, I really don't know what to say. It's just thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to serve as doorkeeper since 2007. In my wildest dream did I ever think of a poor old country boy plowing a mule over in Alabama that I would ever be the doorkeeper of the House of Representatives. I want to thank my post office staff for what a great job they do to let me come in here. And my doorkeepers, I think I got some of the best doorkeepers in the United States. And thank you. And Clerk Bill Riley, he's a great friend, he's helped me. All of you, I appreciate the respect that you have shown me and the corporation all of you have. But most of all, I want to thank my wife. Yesterday was 59 years. And she's the one that makes sure I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get here. So thank her and thank y'all, and God bless you. And I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Thank you so much.
House will come to order. House will come to order. The chair recognizes the Rules Chairman for an announcement.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem, ladies and gentlemen of the House. There will be a Rules Committee meeting in 15 minutes. Have a nice night.
Okay. Chair recognizes Chairman Powell for a motion. Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to HB 751.
Chairman Powell has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 751. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 751 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 38 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to emergency management, so establish the Georgia Emergency Communications Authority.
The chair recognizes Chairman Powell to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is House Bill 751. Was the same bill that we've passed 2 years in a row. It reconstructed the 911 Authorities Act because it had not been upgraded in a real upgrade since its inception over 40 years ago. This is one that cleaned it all up, and we put the governance of the 911 Authority over at GEMA instead of a freestanding governance board. And the changes that was made in the Senate when it left the House, we were allowing the Lieutenant Governor to have 2 appointees to the board and the Speaker to have 2 appointees. And all of that's been done away with, so all the appointees go to the Governor at this point for the 911 Authority. Be glad to stand for questions, and if not, I'd appreciate your support.
You have one question. The chair recognizes Representative Henson for a question.
To my friend in the well, will you yield?
I certainly will.
Did you say you put 911 over GEMA or GEMA over 911?
The 911 authority that's created by this act would be located under GEMA or over there with them.
Thank you.
Save
for
the bureaucracy.
clarification.
There are no more questions, and the gentleman has yielded the well. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 751, all those in favor will vote yes, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the yeas are 131, the nays are 29, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 751. The House will be in recess until 9:40.